Welcome to a new story from Fear Stories. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to ensure you're always up to date with our latest chilling tales and terrifying narratives. You won't want to miss what's in store for you. Now, let's dive into the depths of the unknown, where fear lurks and the eerie awaits.
The title of today's story is Strange Encounters in the Abandoned City. I have lived in it alone for a while. When I left my father's house to the place where I was renting it. It was a small apartment with only one bedroom in a single person's house. I spent a lot of time alone during that period, between studying and watching movies, especially horror movies. I was watching many of them, and despite the fact that I was 21 years old at that time, I still found it difficult to sleep after watching the horror movie. That night when I was lying in my room, the owner of the house, who lives on the upper floor, did not exist, since his car was not outside. I was alone in the house, but I could hear sounds coming from outside the room. The case continued for a while, and I heard random sounds. Honestly, I couldn't know where those sounds were coming from. I got out of my room and headed towards the door of my room, and opened it. Outside the room was a narrow alley. There is a door to the bathroom in the middle of it, and at the end of the hallway, there is another door leading to the living room. At the end of the hallway, I saw something like a scene from a horror movie, which I saw an hour or less before. I saw a person standing at the end of the hallway at the entrance to the living room. The morning light was reaching inside through the windows in my room and the living room, and it was enough to give me a clear vision of that person's body. He built me as a woman's body. She was standing at the entrance of the living room and looking at me directly. Then she started to move backward, while she was still facing me and looking at me. With the low light of the moon the way she was moving, it was a terrifying sight that you can only see in movies. I immediately went back inside my room, closed the door tightly and locked it. I expected that after a few seconds, that woman would come quickly to the door and start her way. She hit him hard, but none of that happened. Instead, I heard a sound of footsteps towards the stairs leading to the exit, and then I heard the sound of the main door being closed. I sat on the bed and froze for almost 10 minutes. I was shocked by the situation then. I took my phone and left the room and opened the door. When everything started to work, I went back to my room. I was wondering that night about who that woman was and how she could enter the house. I did not call the police at the time because it was too late, but the next day I called the owner of the house and asked him to do something. He called his house in the upper floor to make sure that no one was there. It turned out later that the woman who broke the door was his ex-lover. It was clear that she was obsessed with him. After she was able to find the name of his house, she broke the door of the house. I was wondering what that woman was planning to do if she was to take over the part of the house where the owner of the house lives, which she came for, and what she was going to do with it. I am the father of 2 children, one of them is 15 years old, and the other is 10 years old. When this accident happened, my wife was out of the house at that time. I was in my room taking a nap in the middle of the day. My son used to come in and out all the time with his friends, so when I heard the sound of the front door being opened and closed, I knew he was here. But that day when I heard the door being closed for the 4th time, I felt annoyed and called for him to lower his voice. I started hearing other sounds coming from the hallway towards my younger son's room. I thought he was playing Without a Fight. Although the door of my room was closed, the sound was very loud. It sounded like a continuous beating on the ground or the walls. When I got up from the bed and opened the door, the sound was much louder than it was the second time I opened the door. I headed through the hallway towards my younger son's room, and the room door was already open. As soon as I reached the door, I called my son with anger, but I didn't see him there. Instead, I saw a man struggling to face the wall and keep hitting his head against the wall, inside my son's room, to the extent that the blood started to flow from his head and the blood was stuck to the wall. The man looked at me with a sideways glance in his eyes without moving his head. Then I felt the danger. I attacked the man directly and I was able to drop him to the ground and hold him in his hands. And when I saw my son coming out of the bed, he was hiding there. The man didn't show any resistance, but he started screaming and shouting random words, which proved his loss of mental health. I told my son to come to me with my phone quickly while I was still holding the man. Then I called the police and stayed there holding the man in the same situation for about 5 minutes until the police arrived. The man kept smiling and laughing and sometimes screaming and saying things that were not understood for a long time. It is clear that he was mentally ill or that he was under the influence of drugs in a very dangerous way. I have been through many nightmares in my life and I have suffered many disturbances and problems in sleep. I cannot even count the times I have suffered from sleep paralysis. It is a really disturbing thing, and I also woke up to see giant spiders and insects on my bed many times. But it disappeared quickly just to wake up. Those are the insects that I saw seemed real and alive, so I found myself jumping from the bed terrified and throwing the blankets at the non-existent insects. I spent a week of studying, homework, and research. I was physically and mentally exhausted, and I had to complete all my homework at a late time of the night. I woke up at a very late time, it was almost 3 a.m. I had to wake up at 6 a.m. to prepare for school. When I finished all my duties, I fell on the bed, completely exhausted. Despite that, I had some miserable dreams that night too. The best description is that I was, for some reason, in a building that started as a giant plan of a math class. I was trying to escape, and in every room I passed through, I found sweets as in Halloween. After that, the dream turned into that I was trying to escape from something I didn't know. And that thing was laughing continuously with a voice I had never heard before in my life. The sound started as if it was coming from everywhere. The more I tried to escape, the more that sound increased. When I reached the end of the building, I woke up in my bed and I couldn't move. Something unusual happened to me again. I was hit by the waterfall and I heard a laugh in the middle of the room. I moved my eyes to look at the middle of the room, and there were 4 people standing in the room. It was like a family, a tall man, a woman, then a small child and a baby. They were all holding each other's hands, laughing and looking at me with giant smiles on their faces, almost reaching their eyes. I felt a terrible terror. I tried to escape, I tried to scream, but I couldn't do it. The situation continued for a few moments until my body was released from the temporary cell. I threw the blanket at me and threw the blankets at the people standing in the middle of the room. But those 4 bodies disappeared as usual. I had been through nightmares and hallucinations most of the nights, to the extent that I became more afraid of the night, but the hallucinations of that night were the most terrifying of all. I had to go to the doctor the next morning, and he gave me new medications, and with the passing of time, the symptoms of the symptoms I had suffered from began to decrease for a long time. I live in Branson, Missouri. Nearby, there is a city of abandoned buildings. When it was closed, we all felt sad to hear that, not only children, but even adults, because it was really great, and many people came there daily to the public services to get rid of the pressure of a hard day of work. But since it was closed to this day, most of the buildings are still standing and seem like a great place to explore. My friend Carl was very supportive of my idea of going to explore the place. We rode the car and headed towards the abandoned site, and when we arrived, we parked the car in the position of a restaurant car on the other side of the street. It was about 7 in the evening. The sun began to set, and we did not want to go in the daytime. We were afraid that we would bump into guards or other people there. We visited 2 of the most famous buildings, and we ran across the street when no one was there. Then we passed the tree quickly towards the surrounding trees in the city of the West. And we had entered the land of the site. It was very pleasant to walk to the place, seeing all those buildings and buildings that I remember since I was a child. He was still standing there in that cold, empty, and desolate place. He started feeling strange and sad for no reason, as if a part of his childhood had died. We were the only ones in the place with no other sounds except the sound of the night's bells while we were wandering around the place. We quickly realized that the place was not really deserted. It is clear that many people came there since they were locked in the bookshelves and paintings on the walls and the food bags. Some buildings had broken glass, which indicates that some people had invaded them and discovered them. When darkness came, we decided to enter through a tunnel to one of the buildings. Of course, darkness was lurking inside. We started to use the flashlight and started to look inside the basement, where it was full of things. It was like it was used as a storage place, even some things that were in the outside were put there, while my friend in the other side was exploring the place when I was exploring the bathrooms there. When I went to one of them, the smell was strange. I cannot explain it. I was very surprised. There were 3 individual rooms inside the bathroom, and as soon as I entered there, a sound was coming out from one of them. As the sound of something small had fallen on the ground, I turned my flashlight towards the surrounding rooms. All of them had their doors closed, but I am completely sure that the sound was coming from there. I held the bathroom door open with my feet, then I went down on my knees and directed the morning light to the bottom of one of the floors. I saw a couple of animals and our drivers. I felt a complete shock. I was holding myself back and I couldn't breathe. Then I looked down at the other floors and saw the same thing as the first time. There were 3 pairs of animals and the window was clearly below the doors of the room. Someone started moving as if he was trying to get down on his knees to look through the gap below the door. But I didn't stay there long enough to see his face. I was quickly leaving the bathroom. I called my friend on the other side of the hallway. He came quickly. We met in the middle of the hall, and we followed the stairs until we reached the tunnel we entered through. At that time, we did not respond to the conversation or ask questions, or explain what was happening, but the only thing we focused on was leaving and moving away from the building. When we moved away from the place with enough space, we sat down, and we took a deep breath, and I told him about what I saw inside the bathroom. At first, he thought that I was trying to scare him. I told him that one of the 3 people inside the rooms was trying to escape to look at me. When I was trying to explain the situation to him, he realized with the look on my face that I was not joking about that. It is clear that we were not alone there that night. After that, we left the place and went back to the car. The night was completely over. We didn't go back to that place again because I don't have any explanation for what I saw there. It was a scary and strange scene, and of course it ruined the fun and the mood of what a wonderful day it was. Subscribe to our stories channel and be transported to a world of captivating tales and unforgettable adventures. Join our community of storytellers and enthusiasts, and embark on a journey through the written word that will leave you both enchanted and enlightened. Don't miss out on the magic. Subscribe now and let the stories unfold.